So we are going to talk about ethics in business research. And in this area, we are thinking about how can we conduct research without the jeopardy of ethics issue. And how can we, when we're doing research and what we think is important for the readers or audience to understand what we're doing is reasonable, not using some kind of approach, linear approach to make the research working, but actually is ethical challenge. So ethics in business research is focused on the moral principle. So it can guide the researcher to how to conduct research in a responsible manner, and also can be morally can be defined easily. So in the sense of the moral principle or norms can be a way help us to know what could be a moral choice or what could be a right approach to execute research process, and how can we interact with the people in our research samples, that they can be able to trust us and or be able to understand what we are doing is not jeopardize their interest. So it's focused on certain relationship between the researcher who conduct research and the people or the samples that researcher obtained to explore or to discover in the research findings. So the ethical conduct where it can apply to. The ethical conduct can apply to the organizations and the member that sponsor the research. So sometimes in research we can see some conflict interest or some research that people care about, and then they also mark who should I appreciate for some sponsorship. For example, if we look into the applied research that focusing maybe on sales output, sales promotion, but if it coming from cigarette company, if they want to promote cigarette and sales promotion and entrust the organization or researcher to develop in the sales promotion, whether it's considered ethical, that is another challenge. So this is something for people to understand. Some organization may sponsor the research, or certain member may have specific individual interests or the interest to benefit certain elements, many political perspective. Political campaign, you have someone to sponsor the research, and that person maybe have a decision making on certain policy, and whether that is a right person, or how can we avoid this situation. So here is to do with the researcher who undertake research. The analysis will provide the result. So analysis whether they are under the sponsorship, are they interlinked with the people or not. So that is something important. And also if the respondent who provide them with the necessary data, which means when we conduct research, sorry, my computer is somewhat crazy, and let me work on it a bit. So when the respondent in the research process, when they provide necessary data, if this respondent is not the right sample, for example, if we are going to conduct a research about user interface design, UI design, and then we are talking about what could be considered the most effective interface for the maybe certain company platform. And then if you have a respondent which is inside the company, you probably think, yes, that's the right sample. However, if this person just joined the company, doesn't have an idea about company platform, and you ask the person on the user interface design whether that is a right sample, or if your user interface design is designed something specifically for the new people, that could be a different idea how you frame your work. So the way you conduct your research, you need to be carefully to think about how you conduct it, who's give me the money or sponsor the, you know, equipment or budget, the person's background in sponsorship, or who is the right person to conduct this research, who doesn't have a conflict interest, or what kind of analysis you incorporate. If analysis is generally tend to go for the qualitative researcher, how they perform, is that the right way of using qualitative research or quantitative research, by which we will elaborate a little more in our theoretical design. And then also the respondent, which is our sample, who provide us the data here. So it would be very important in terms of ethical behavior in the research process. We need to think about what are the data collection, how we collect our data. Do we pay someone to provide data? Or are we able to analyze data from someone we pay for? Or, you know, sometimes some people using using in a research center to collect data, and you pay the research center, you know, by individual sample, say €5 individually, and then pay them to do a survey. But if this is a research center, are they creditable? Or are they type of company who fabric data there? So how you really access the data? What is the, you know, credible institute to provide? And also how you perform the data analysis. Some data need to be manipulated to make it, you know, clarify as a manipulation process. But some data analysis and manipulation, it could be have a result that may be threatening to certain group of people, like a health. So if your health in a hospital health and some kind of patient, if some people manipulate the data in terms of data analysis, the output may become a problem, and that result, would that be trustworthy? So all this ethical behavior in terms of the data and how we give out our information, what we are going to conduct our research, and how we communicate with our, you know, respondent, and how we go through the research process. Are we carefully design our research so we can select the right sample, or are we able to filter certain sample that is not considered adequate for the research? And if that's some confidential information or certain respondent that require confidentiality, because what they say may leak out the company policy. But if we didn't address the complaint, would people able still tell the complaint? Or if it's some confidentiality, how can we make sure in our data analysis that would not jeopardize the complaint's interest or what they are performing, like, you know, product design, product innovation. If we release certain product information that is crucial in the patent, how would they be, you know, jeopardize the company in the market and, you know, intellectual property? And how can we be sure as a researcher we protect our respondents' responsibility and the care while we still can contribute in research? So there's some kind of typical research involved with ethical risk. For example, here, sometimes you were choosing vulnerable group, and whether this vulnerable group would be a right group you use. For example, you may use children, you may use young people, but I recall in the law area, some people using children, and sometimes they think about they are not able to tell right and wrong, they are not able to give out certain right information. Are we sure this is the right type of the group we can use to collect data? If so, if they can, what kind of data they can provide. So like young people, children's, or people have a learning disability, if you have someone who has a difficulty in reading text. And then you ask the people to read a paragraph and then tell them, what do you think about this situation? If the person can't read, or the person have difficulty to digest, or the person needs special need, maybe they need a translation. And if you ask them to, you know, process certain piece of information, ask them their opinion, they may be not the right type of people, and then it's ethical risk, because you possibly tell the person, if you ask people who need a translator, and then probably just say yes, they understand, but is this yes a real yes? And then whether you select the right type of group or do you provide the right tool to the person, make them less vulnerable in terms of understanding or special needs. Sometimes could be a sensitive topic. So some people may think about collecting data, but that kind of topic may relate to illegal activity. And then how do you really do it? Illegal, like a sexual illegal element, and then the people who has experience of being abused or face of violence, if you want them to reflect the process, that could be very another injury or damage of their mental status. So sometimes when the doctor and patient situation, when they collect data, they ask the people reflect the time when they were abused. And that may be not so smart way of collecting data, and maybe the other way of doing that. So the other thing is subject can be only accessed via a gatekeeper, like what I say. If you need to collect data from a specific research center, and this research center you don't know the credit, that could be something you need to be cautious about. Or sometimes the gatekeeper need to go through the ethnicity issue or culture group. For example, in Africa, they may have a lot of ethnicity group, and sometimes if you're interested to collecting data in certain culture or certain region, you need to go through the tribunal chief to get the approval, and then what could be the process? Sometimes they need a bribery, sometimes you need a special connection, sometimes they tell you what you can do and you can't do, and that may be an effect on your outcome, and that sometimes you cannot report. Sometimes they say, yeah, you can come to my group to do this research, but you can't report anything negative, and that would be another ethical research issue that you are going to jeopardize. The other thing is about deception. Is about sometimes the participants in the maybe like an interview process or in a survey questionnaire design, when the question is not well designed, or the interviewer may not able to conduct the interview process smoothly, then make the participant give out a partial information and they is not explain the situation. Or sometimes the researcher is so desperate to access data, and through this desperation, they may recording the research process illegally, or they never inform the respondent, the people they are filming, or they are not informed the respondent, their name will be disclosed. So something like that as a certain deception, this is also quite critical for the researcher to think about, am I able to let my respondent fully aware they know I'm doing the research, and then they can disclose or express their information instead of some kind of through the manipulation, and then researcher accesses data, but this data may be not be accepted. So this is also associated. How do you access the respondent? Do you access respondent under their consent or not? So, or is this if there's any consequence in your research activity, may lead to respondent to create more stress, or they feel more stronger anxiety involved, or they may feel humiliated among the target group. Sometimes people do the research use a focus group, and which means they conduct a research not one by one interview or survey that people can answer in their own way. They maybe invite 4 or 5 people and talk about topic, and this topic may trigger some respondent feel stressed. I'm not allowed to tell this situation, like a bully, because the person is in my group in this research process, and I don't feel comfortable. If I address something, I could be targeted as I'm a troublemaker. So this is all indicating research ethical risk. So the ethical principle is addressed on how to avoid harm to the participant. Okay, so you can make them feel, in this research, I may be able to get something nice of it. Sometimes in conducting interviews, sometimes the manager enjoyed to be interviewed. Even they use their time for the researcher, but that interview question help the manager reflect the process. And also sometimes the manager able to using the question provided by the researcher to think about, I never thought of it. Maybe I should work on it as something for my company to conduct that applied research. So they can feel something beneficial from that research collection process. And at the same time, some company or some researcher to conduct research, and they will share research outcome to the people they involve if they're interested, and then they can see what's the outcome. So that would be let them feel participated in the outcome sharing. They can make something, learn something from the research outcome. And also, as I mentioned, participant would be they would be very care about whether they were informed this is a research, or how would they be disclosed in the research process. And we also need to think about, do we actually keep the participant privacy? Do we need to mention about their gender or age or some kind of disability or something? What kind of privacy they care? Sometimes some people doing social science study and maybe looking to the transgender or bisexual people, and whether they want to disclose their bisexual in certain organization operations. So sometimes some transgender or bisexual people or homosexual people in organization, they don't want people to know, but they want to address something they care to benefit organization policy in terms of employee well-being. And this is also respect the privacy of participants and avoid the use of deception, as I mentioned about. Try not to trigger the people, doing something that without their consent, filming, recording, or note-taking, or taking photo without their, awareness. So this is something would be also important to make them in the process emotionally. How do we avoid harm to the participant? They don't feel embarrassed. They don't feel, maybe in the interview or in a focus group or in the survey question, they don't find the question is like attacking certain people, or the question could be a leading question to make them feel like, why am I answer this kind of question? This is totally irrelevant to me. And also not generate their mental stress if they ask them to reflect certain complex situation, whether they will trigger the emotional part. That is something to be careful, because we don't want the research process become a negative emotion reaction from the participant, because when they do it, maybe they can be honest, but at the same time, what they say could be more extreme, and that kind of extreme may become a biased situation in research output. So how can we avoid ethical issue in research? So ethical issue research, we should be careful. So how to make sure we get the respondent or participant, they aware this is research. So informed consent is necessary. So we need to make sure, here is the list. What's the goal of our research? Who is perform research? Sometimes we mention about, the person, this is a research, but we didn't indicate what type of people would be participate in this research, or who would be involved in terms of researcher, their gender, maybe an issue, their cultural relevance, or maybe could be another conflict interest involved. And also to do with participant, maybe like I mentioned about the focus group, you may involve multiple people in the research events, and those people may have another issue, conflict interest. And the other thing I mentioned about who would be undertaking is, I think about another example. Sometimes in international relations research or some kind of conflict management research, when the researcher could be from the so-called enemy country, they may have a problem with it because they can't relate to the researcher. For example, maybe people from Serbia dealing with people from Kosovo, they already have a historical issue, and they may not, like Serbia doesn't recognize the country of Kosovo. And in that situation, in terms of research about international relation, it could be totally biased, and the respondent may not feel comfortable doing that, participating in that research. And also with the inform who will be in the research, so who is participants, what kind of information, sometimes participant would like to know what kind of information researcher wants. So we need to give us some idea what kind of information we may need to access as a researcher. So the participant, either they can prepare, or they need to think about it and say, sorry, I can't do because there's a conflict interest. So we give them a choice of being, participate in the research. And what kind of information we are looking for is sometimes the participant may able to address, I'm not in that area, maybe I can suggest someone else. And so this is something another, sometimes you're giving and you are also taking, because it's like a collaboration process between the researcher and participant. And also the participant care about how long it's going to take in the process. Sometimes answer a survey, I'm not sure people would be interested to answer a questionnaire over an hour. And then we just through the question. Or sometimes people in interview, they maybe have a timetable, and they may not wanting to be interviewed in a very early or very late in the night, when sometimes the interview could be on the video in a different country. That could be also another challenge. Or whether the participation in the study is, you have a choice, so it's voluntary. And whether do people need to answer all questions, or do they relevant to the question? This is something also important, because sometimes they may not relevant to the question. They just answer based on what they assume, and that question may be targeting the right type of people, and that kind of ethical could be down to the respondent. They are responding unethically to ethical research, and the outcome could be also jeopardized. And also anonymity, whether anonymous, whether the respondent can keep their privacy, and do we have a report to inform the respondents? They can to know what's the outcome, or when they expect to see some findings if they are interested. So that means we need to respect the privacy. So respondents need to be careful. They are well protected in terms of their data, in terms of their background, in terms of how they say things or what they say things, or maybe they are indicating some people's name, but would they be disclosed? And avoid deception, as I earlier mentioned about. Okay, so sometimes we say to the respondent, this interview will take about 20 minutes, but you end up using 1.5 hours. And that is considered a deception, because the people think about you didn't prepare, or you try to use my time and not honor the agreements between the time I given. So this is something to be careful about, deception part. And also check the list when you conduct the research. Sometimes think about, do I really mention about the privacy when I inform my participant conducting research? And if that's some kind of research output I would like to share, and as a copy of final output, what could be important message or important information I need to be cautious, because sometimes they don't want to see their name disclosed. Or do I really keep my promise, and also let the respondent feel this is reciprocal between the research conducting and the finding, or some participation in giving the data. And is there any risk? So sometimes whether the sample, the respondent, will face stress or legal issue, or sometimes when they mention something illegal, would they be reported? or if it's some kind, for example, some study they want to study about homosexual research in social science in purchasing certain type of the product, and they conducting in a country that doesn't allow homosexual, for example Malaysia or China. They are quite probably when they are participant in research to benefit in the product innovation or certain type of product, and that part made the research, if they are not sure, researcher will not report them to the local government. That would be some kind of risk assessment to make sure it's the right area we collect our data. So some confidentiality would be important, and also the respondents, they are informed what would be the research subject, how long they are going to conduct, what's the research output purpose for, and what could be the knowledge the research aim for, and then who would be involved in the research and who would be joined in the research collection process, and is there any ethical issue involved in terms of mentally and physically, because health wise, for example in the COVID-19, if people want to conduct research face-to-face, and people will consider, I'm not sure, because that could be a health issue, and why I'm going out to see you in person for your research, and that would be jeopardized in terms of the health concern. Or sometimes people conduct a so-called employee well-being, and during the COVID period, and some researcher want to the participant who may suffering from the COVID-19, the lockdown situation, and talk about how depressed they are, and that would become a trigger to another issue, could be trigger to the participant into a melancholy or further depression. So that is another things people need to be careful. And also in the researcher conducting research is it would be also important to ask the participant, do they have any taboo or things they are cautious about, they don't want the researcher to involve certain type of people, or some people maybe have could be religious or cultural level, they would like to for example the gynecologist collecting data, and the participant probably looking for a female doctor instead of male doctor. So this is something additional for you to think about ethical research. But what I'm talking, it could be involved with whatever scientific, pure science or health science or social science, like a business and management is very strong with social science. Hospitalization management is also part of the management domain. So the central to the principle about research, we need to think about, as long as there's a human involved, we need to consider ethical. If there are participants involved, we need to think about vulnerability, mental issues, sensitivity topic, deception. And also we need to make sure we need to make the participant feel good in the research process. They feel comfortable in the research process, instead of they feel the negative effect from the research process. So this is a key information for the business ethics in the research process, or so-called research ethics in the business process. So from what we have talking from first session till now, this is a summary as a packaging about doing research in business world, and how we define research, how we distinguish the difference between applying basic-based research, and why manager should do research or should know about research, and how should they be careful using internal, external researcher in their research topic, and other things to do with ethics in business research. So this is would be the last part of our first session in the research.